Hello, everyone. We're going to start off on Chapter 1. Welcome to Biochem Lecture. We're going to start with the foundations of biochemistry. This chapter is an introductory chapter, and it's going to kind of give you an overview of the concepts that we will be really building on through the rest of the semester. Those being cellular foundations, chemical, physical, and genetic. All of these are very important in their background to biochemistry. And they talk about generally how life emerged and evolved into the diversity of organisms that we see today. To break it down a little bit on what we'll be focusing on, again, we're going to be looking at cellular foundations, so things like distinguishing features of living organisms, and the structure and function of each part of the cell. So these are things that you should already be familiar with. And again, this chapter is really just kind of a review chapter. So as we go through, if there are things that you don't feel comfortable with, or you think, oh, I don't really remember that from a class so much, this is the time now to stop and review these topics. We'll also be talking about chemical foundations. So in chemistry, things like the roles of small and large biomolecules and the regulation of metabolism and catalysis. This is where chemistry is going to play a role in biochem. Even some physical foundations. You might have actually seen these physical foundations also in your chemistry classes. Things like energy transformation, work diagrams, and how those apply to living organisms. And then our genetic and evolutionary foundations. So these are ideas in how coding of genetic information is in DNA and the roles of mutations and selection in evolution. Biochemistry is just generally the chemistry of living matter, and living matter is characterized. We actually have kind of a checkoff sheet of what we consider living matter. And the things that have to pass for something to be alive, to be living matter, is it has to maintain homeostasis, meaning the interactions of individual components have to be dynamic and coordinated. It has to be complex. It has a high degree of complexity and organization, multiple organelles or multiple organs. It has to reproduce. So capacity for fairly precise self-replication while allowing enough change for evolution. It has to use energy, the extraction, transformation, and systemic use of energy to create and maintain structures to do work. It also has to grow. So it uses that energy and nutrients, and it has to become larger in size or more complex in general. It has to respond to stimuli. So this is like a short-term response, the ability to sense and respond to changes in the surrounding of it. Again, short-term, immediate response to stimuli. And then it also has to be able to adapt to the environment. This is like a longer-term adaptation. So this is evolution through unintentional changes, things like mutations, that can be advantageous to an entire species. This is like as the overall environment changes, you as an organism, as a living thing, can unintentionally evolve and change. So one big question people always ask, actually last semester I got this question a lot from passing students. They said, Dr. T, we're hearing all about this virus, coronavirus. Are viruses alive? So let's ask the question, what about a virus? Does it check these boxes? So the first, again, is, does it maintain homeostasis? Viruses don't have any organelles or nuclei or cytoplasm like cells do, so there's no way that they can monitor changes. They don't have any brain, let's say, anything like organizing unit that is monitoring and allowing them to change as they go or maintain that homeostasis within them as an organism. So it asks if it is capable of maintaining steady state internal environment on its own. No, it is not. So already off the bat, we have a no. But just for the sake of completeness, let's go through the rest of the checklist and see. Is a virus complex? Life is complicated in general. And again, living organisms reflect complexity and structure. Viruses do this. They have smaller building blocks that come together to finalize their final project. They have genes that are made from nucleic acids and a capsid that's also made from smaller things called capsomere. So they are definitely a complex structure that is made of multiple smaller units. They are very, very, very small, but they still are made of smaller pieces, those building blocks of nucleic acids and amino acids. What about reproduction? This is a little bit of a hazy answer. So one of the basic urges in nature, of course, is to pass on our genetic information. And viruses, to do this, they have to use a host cell, right? To create more of themselves, they have to infect a host cell and make more virons. So since viruses don't have those organelles or nuclei or even the ribosomes to help them make the DNA, et cetera, they don't have the tools they need to copy genes, or much less to create a new viron. Now, they still do technically make more of themselves. So this is like a kind of maybe answer. It kind of depends on what you consider reproduction. Use energy. So viruses definitely benefit from energy. They definitely are getting something out of their host cell's energy, but they're not utilizing their own energy. So again, a hazy answer here. Maybe they're considered something like vampires. They can't actually, they're not actually producing this energy, but they have to have some type of host to gain their sustenance. So still like we don't know. Okay, what about grow? Viruses definitely, again, manipulate host cells into building new viruses, but they are built in their fully formed state and they neither increase in size or complexity throughout their existence. So they're built and that is it. So this is a definite no. They do not grow and they do not increase in complexity. Respond to stimuli. So again, remember this is like an immediate response to stimuli when you have a change in the environment. So viruses don't change behaviors in response to things like touch, sound, or light in any way that we know other living organisms do. But there hasn't been enough research to definitely say that viruses do not respond to anything. So again, this is kind of a question mark maybe situation. Generally, all of the tested stimuli that we have put to viruses, they don't respond to, but that doesn't mean that we just haven't found the particular stimuli that they do. Okay, what about adapt to the environment? This is long-term adaptation, changing themselves via mutation to adapt. They definitely do this, and we know this because we constantly are having to make new vaccines for the flu, right? So unlike the previous requirement, this is an adaptation over time, and because viruses constantly are changing and they're mutating, this makes it very hard, for example, to design drugs or vaccines against them because they mutate and they adapt over time to their environment unintentionally, but through mutation, they're able to do this adaptation. So hopefully that answers your question about viruses. Viruses are not living. We will be still talking about them in this class, even though technically will be generally focused on living organisms in biochemistry. We'll still talk about viruses and how they fit in with living organisms.